It is my great honor, as you see somebody is up here with me. Jim is our next speaker, Jim Colvin. I want to tell you just a little bit about Jim. Jim grew up in a small town in Georgia, very similar to Alex City. After high school and college, he went into the Army as a second lieutenant in 1971. Many assignments all over the world, some good, some not so good. He moved 19 times in 30 years. He retired from the U.S. Army in 2002 as a colonel and several positions working for the defense contractors, and finally retired in 2012. He moved here the same year to Alex City and became a member of our church. He served as trustee, small group facilitator, member of the choir, and married wife Denise, his supervisor, which she's watching live stream today. Did y'all catch that? And they have 2 children and 4 grandchildren. So at this time, it's a great honor for me to have Jim come up and speak.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Good morning. Good morning. Let me get this over with first. Hello, Kenley and Keely, Cammie and Lexi. Grandchildren. So, Billy, thank you for asking me to do this to honor our vets today and talk a little bit about the stewardship campaign also. But he said, if you could, try to tie in your veterans honors to the stewardship campaign. And first I thought, nah, no problem. Then I almost called him back and said, just tell me to go tackle an NFL linebacker somewhere, you know. So we'll see how that happens. Hopefully I can do it. But Veterans Day is always on the 11th of November, which was yesterday, regardless of what day of the week it is. And it started, as Glenda said, as Armistice Day, which was honoring the veterans of World War I. It eventually expanded to include all conflicts and all veterans. So veterans in here, I'm going to make you stand up again and just, you can say, I'm doing 3 squats at church. So if you've ever said these words, I thought it would be interesting for the audience to hear the oath that these folks had to take. If you've ever taken this oath, stand up. I state your name, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me, according to regulations, the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So help me God. Now, sometimes veterans have been described as heroes. So I would like the sanctuary, you've already seen them once, but turn around and look. These are heroes. All right, you can take your seats. Stand up for another squat if you want to. I know it's not Memorial Day, but I want to honor my father today, and he provided some good lessons learned, which I think would be meaningful to share on a Veterans Day. James M. Colvin, Sr., I'm a junior. He was a World War II veteran. He served in the Pacific Theater as part of General Douglas MacArthur's island hopping campaign. He ended up in Okinawa. I couldn't ever get him to talk much about his experiences during World War II. So one day I asked my mother, how come he won't talk to me about these things? She said, well, he saw some horrible things and he doesn't want to invoke the memories that come with those horrible things. He died at the age of 79 from emphysema. and other tobacco products. I was in the hospital room with him when he passed away. It was a horrible death. So if you smoke or chew, get rid of it now. So I asked him, why did you start smoking to begin with? His answer was, well, the Army gave them to us. And for those of you that served, you know that C rations, when you first came in, had a little 3-pack of cigarettes in them. Such famous brands as Camel, Lucky Strike, Chesterfield, Pall Mall, little 3-pack. And this was supposed to calm your nerves in combat or going into combat. So he also shared that one reason he started smoking was nobody ever expected to come home alive. No one. Now here we're talking about 18, 19, 20-year-old kids that are thousands of miles from home and are scared to death. What kind of mentality is that? I mean, how do they get that kind of mentality? They had their whole life in front of them, but they're just saying, I'm going to die. It's inevitable. The second thing I'll pass on to you is a little show and tell. How many of you know what this might be or is? Raise your hand. I'm not going to call on you. Okay, I'm only 4 or 5 of you, but the rest of you, I'll tell you. This is a steel-covered copy, believe it or not, of the New Testament. My father said that they handed this to the troops as they were getting on the troop ships to deploy. And I just have to share this because I'm getting ready for the lesson, and I have this sitting on the kitchen counter, and I walked back through the kitchen, and I noticed a little gleam on it. And you can see it's all rusted, but I started turning it like this, and there's an inscription on it, handwritten inscription. And it says, I think, may this keep you from harm. And this fits in your uniform pocket right here above your heart. So now you got steel and the Bible. What else do you need? Every Memorial Day, I watch a movie called Saving Private Ryan, and I'm sure many of you have seen that. If you can get through the first 20 minutes of that, that's pretty gruesome. So you have to ask the question, what drove these men to do that? To step into almost sure death? We'd like to think it was for Mama's apple pie and the red, white, and blue, patriotism, but study after study have shown that those are not the reasons. I'd like to read some excerpts from an article from the Military Review dated 2000. There are 3 stages soldiers transition through that affect how they behave in combat. First stage is, can't happen to me. They think of it as almost an adventure. Second stage, well, it can happen to me, but it's probably just a remote possibility. And the third stage is, yep, it can happen to me. And as you can hear, my father was in stage 3, and all of his friends were too. The strongest motivation for enduring combat, especially for U.S. soldiers, is the bond formed among members of the unit. Simply put, soldiers fight because of the other members of their small unit. Most soldiers value honor and reputation more than their lives because letting a fellow soldier down seems like you failed. As an example, quick example, get the hook if I go too long. During World War II, this bond caused wounded soldiers to go absent without leave from the hospital or replacement center and return to their squads rather than a chance reassignment elsewhere. As a U.S. Marine sergeant during World War II, William Manchester was hospitalized in Okinawa. When he heard his unit was about to make an amphibious landing, he left the hospital and joined his unit to participate in the assault. He did not do it for the Marine Corps or his personal glory. He did it because he did not want to let his friends down. And as Glenda said, the Bible says it pretty eloquently. John 15:13 tells us, "No greater love has man than to lay down his life for a friend." So let me try to transition some here into the campaign, stewardship. So tell me if it worked or not at the end. The purpose of our military is to fight and to win and fight our nation's wars. How do they do that? Well, of course, they need funding. Our tax dollars go into our defense budgets. All of the services come up with their budget, what they need. They forward it to the Department of Defense, and the Department of Defense then combines it or sends it on. It's combined with other federal agency budgets to come up with our federal budget. And that covers salaries, training, health care, maintains equipment, facilities, and purchases new equipment. And what happens when they don't get enough money to do this, what they need to do? Well, it's a rhetorical question. You might know that our readiness goes down. And encourages our enemies, and there are plenty of them out there, and they can smell weakness in an instant. But let me refer to the same analogy applies to our church. Let me coin a phrase called cornerstone readiness to coincide with military readiness. And you might imagine if the church doesn't have enough to do what it needs to do, the readiness of this church, cornerstone will go down, and encourages our enemy, Satan, who you know can come in many different forms. And he will exploit Christian weaknesses. So let me recommend that you watch the Cornerstone Stewardship Campaign clip online, and there are excellent presentations there by Diane Lemon, Glenda Hill, Scotty and Jan Howell, David Hand, David Upton, and others. And this information is a lot more detailed than what I'm going to talk about or have talked about, because I take a more strategic view. So let me close with these 2 points. Give what you can, and next time you see a veteran, go up and say, "Thank you for your service." Now, how do you identify these folks? Well, a lot of times they'll have a hat on. It says Vietnam vet, or it'll say, very few anymore say World War II vet. But they appreciate it, and let me tell you how much they appreciate it. I made a habit out of doing this, and I don't know where I was at the time, but I saw a guy wearing a Vietnam veteran's hat. And he was sitting down at a table with, I guess, his wife, his kids, and his grandkids. So I saunter up to him and say, "Sir, thank you for your service, and oh, by the way, welcome home." And I didn't get a response. I looked down, and his eyes were filling with tears. So I'm like, I felt about this tall. Oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I did not mean to offend you, and I apologized. Still no response. So I kind of looked over at his wife, and kind of went, "I'm so sorry." She said, "Don't be. This is the first time anybody has ever said that to him since he's come home from Vietnam. So please do that. And don't forget, the same thing could apply to firemen, policemen, and any first responder who will also get in the line of fire for any of us. And by the way, if you haven't noticed, there's a policeman that comes and provides security for all of us every Sunday. Go thank him. Don't flood him today, but throughout the year, please thank him. So let me close by saying, may God bless this church and may God bless the USA. Thank you.